Prepárense para la guerra, son las palabras de Pete Hegseth. Ojito porque todos esos generales y almirantes que estaban reunidos estaban con cara de pocos amigos. Incluso Donald Trump notó la frialdad de algunos de ellos y les invitó a marcharse. Pero bueno, es el aperitivo. Vamos a hablar también, obviamente, de la situación de Israel, un Netanyahu que fue obligado a llamar a Qatar delante de Donald Trump. Donald Trump le dijo, Netanyahu, tienes que llamar a Qatar, garantizando así que no va a volver a suceder ningún tipo de ataque. Y hay algunas noticias que invitan a pensar, o lo venimos trayendo. Luego vamos a traer un pequeño bloque al final de Irán, que se está preparando un ataque por parte de Israel a Irán y que Irán lo sabe y se está preparando. Pero vamos
If he can figure out what the problem is, perhaps he could send somebody to my house and figure out all the problems I have with my computer and internet. Look, 90% of everything that he cited is simply untrue. We are faced almost every week with another set of allegations against the Russians that have no basis in fact. He's part of the globalist triumvirate that I call the three amigos, Starmer, Macron, and Merz, who have concluded that they have to keep this war against Russia going in order to stay in office. Because if this conflict should end, if there should be some sort of arrangement that provides peace, if they recognize the legitimacy of Russia's national security interests in Ukraine, or for that matter, anywhere else, everyone's going to say, well, then why have you done this to us? Why have you deindustrialized us? Why have you destroyed our scientific industrial base? Why won't you buy energy that is cheap and available? Why not trade with the Russians, or for that matter, the Chinese and everyone else? Are you suicidal? Because that's effectively what Merz and his colleagues that ruled Germany have turned out to be, suicidal. Their primary goal is not to harm Russia, but to destroy Germany, because they haven't done any real harm to Russia at all. That's the myth that we're dealing with. So I don't know what all of those specific instances are, but if you were to line them up and we were to go through them, I suspect 90% would be dismissed out of hand. And the other 10%, we'd have to say, well, we need to explore further. But are any of these justification for a war against another nation state, let alone Russia? And I think the answer is absolutely not. First of all, most of it's nonsense. And secondly, why would you want to push or put the survival of your nation at risk of extermination in a war that doesn't need to be fought?
Right. En el Pentágono, ¿los generales se van a levantar? La pregunta recorre pasillos y despachos mientras la unidad cruje. Altos mandos cuestionan la estrategia del secretario de Guerra Pete Hegseth, a la que califican de miope y potencialmente inapropiada, y temen que reduzca la competencia con China a solo Taiwán y debilite alianzas en Europa. El telón de fondo es una cumbre en Virginia, un anuncio tajante en Cuántico. Desde este momento, la única misión del recién restaurado Departamento de Guerra es esta: librar la guerra, prepararse para la guerra y prepararse para ganar. Esas han sido las palabras de Hegseth ante una cúpula que ya no le cree. ¿Es este el inicio de un quiebre en la cadena de mando?
We've obviously got everything right. Then the notion that investments made under Trump's first term somehow or another were world-changing events that have produced greatness in this term is equally nonsense. It takes a minimum of 10 years to fundamentally move or change any military organization. I mean, it's just a fact. And usually it's investments made 10 to 20 years earlier that really pay dividends on the battlefield. I didn't hear anything that persuaded me that he really understands the profession of arms. I don't think he understands the gravity of the situation in the world today, or I doubt seriously that he would have wasted everybody's time flying all the way to Washington, D.C. for what looked like a pep rally.
Yeah, it did look like a pep rally. And if you thought he might have been patting them on the back with that comment right there, Gary, let's go ahead and play the other ones you had there, because at the end, he left them with a pretty stark warning. Now, what he was specifically talking about there was that he had gone through this long rigmarole on the woke stuff of the previous administration and trashed the Biden administration up one side and down the other, and implied that the generals themselves were not doing a good job of training the troops on things that actually matter. He at one point said, now would you want to bring your own children into this force if you're not training them up, implying that they weren't, and then saying that they need to resign now? And I think you and I both talked before. I think there are plenty of senior and flag officers who should resign because of failure to accomplish their duty and failures on the battlefield even. But I just worry that this version of asking to leave sounds more like we're just shifting from the left, woke to the new right ideology, and you have to be on board with this or get out. How do you read that?
I think if I were a four-star sitting there listening to this, my initial response to what he just said is that if we're not doing everything as well as you think we should, that instead of asking us to do more with less, perhaps you should ask us to do less with less. In other words, the resources, the manpower, the equipment, all of it is in very varying degrees of readiness, probably not what it should be. In fact, we know that for a fact. The Navy is glaringly obvious in that condition. We have an F-35 that has a readiness rate that is appalling, and one wonders why we've invested so heavily in it. All of this data is available. Did the men sitting in the audience create these things? Absolutely not. They inherited everything. This is one of the things that I found when I was on active duty, is that the majority of general officers were very focused on their daily inbox and what they had to deal with right now, as opposed to thinking about anything in the future or really understanding the past. Since none of them, there were exceptions, I'm sure, but certainly with maybe one or two that I met in almost 30 years of service, I would say almost none of them understood the origins of the force they were commanding. In other words, why?
I would just say for months we've been asking for a list of which programs were cut and why, and all we have received is this unintelligible spreadsheet, a sheet that does not seem to reflect reality. We need clear answers on how you need to plan to spend this year's funding, and asking for a commitment that you let us know, because you have terminated programs, you have fired staff. What are you going to do with that money that was already appropriated?
Well, again, we're waiting for OMB guidance, and obviously they'll reach out and work with Congress on these funds.
OMB is not working with Congress. The president is not working with Congress. You are not working with the Congress. We need to understand, if we are going to appropriate dollars, what it is that has happened. What is it that you propose to do with the billions of dollars that you have expropriated?
Yeah.
Billions of dollars meant to save lives, gone. Programs that fed children, that vaccinated communities, that kept fragile nations stable, dismantled overnight. And when Congress demanded answers, Marco Rubio had none. What you're about to see isn't just a hearing, it's a masterclass in accountability and a reminder of what happens when power forgets its purpose.
Secretary Rubio, human lives have been lost. Extensive damage is done to the U.S. international standing under your watch. This would not have happened if the administration had followed the law and congressional intent. Congress appropriated foreign aid funding with a clear set of directives, yet with no notice to Congress. The administration has broken the law, completely dismantled U.S. Foreign aid, hijacked funding for the State Department and USA.
Qué largo que va a ser. Hoy en el boletín oficial hay un decreto de Milei que autoriza ejercicios militares con Estados Unidos en territorio argentino. Y lo autoriza él por decreto sin que lo autorice el Congreso. ¿Por qué es importante esto? Porque la Constitución, en el artículo 75, inciso 28, dice que es el Congreso el que tiene que autorizar el ingreso de tropas extranjeras. Y lo que dice Milei en el decreto de hoy es que lo mandó al Congreso, ¿sí? Y el Congreso no lo trató. Dice, de hecho, considerando que se envió al Congreso para su tratamiento la autorización de entrada de tropas extranjeras a territorio nacional. Bueno, el Congreso no lo autorizó por ahora. Quiero aclarar algo, es normal que se hagan ejercicios militares, de hecho son dos ejercicios, uno es con Chile y otro es con Estados Unidos. No ese es el problema. El problema es que si el Congreso no te lo autorizó, no lo podés hacer. Y si vos lo haces igual sin que el Congreso lo autorice, lo que estás haciendo es, una vez más, decir, a mí no me importa lo que haga el Congreso, porque lo hace con ejercicios militares, lo hace con la ley de emergencia en discapacidad, y lo va a hacer con el financiamiento universitario y con la emergencia en pediatría, etc. Y ahora lo hace con algo que es importante, obvio, que es presencia de Fuerzas Armadas de Estados Unidos en territorio argentino. ¿Dónde? Bueno, vamos a mostrarlo. Ahí dice que si no se lo autorizan, esto va a afectar significativamente.
Misiles rusos rodearon la capital venezolana. La información brindada por el portal ruso Giport.ru es puntual. Misiles antiaéreos desplegados para responder cualquier embate de Washington. Caracas, en alerta máxima de combate, amaneció protegida por sistemas Buk M2E y el mensaje quedó claro. Si hay provocación, habrá respuesta. No se trata de una escenografía, sino de capacidad real. Estos sistemas pueden atacar aeronaves, helicópteros y misiles de crucero modernos hasta un radio de 20 kilómetros, lo que obliga a cualquier plan enemigo a recalcular rutas y tiempos. La secuencia es transparente. Advertencias del Pentágono.
Una línea ha sido cruzada. En las aguas azules e históricamente turbulentas del Mar Caribe, un peligroso juego de provocación y poder que se había estado librando en las sombras de la diplomacia y el espionaje económico, ha llegado a su punto de ebullición. Ya no se trata de una crisis silenciosa susurrada en los pasillos del poder en Washington y Beijing. Es un desafío abierto, declarado bajo el sol tropical para que el mundo entero vea y comprenda sus implicaciones. La Armada del Ejército Popular de Liberación de China, PLAN, en una maniobra sin precedentes en su historia moderna de proyección de poder, no solo ha llegado para apoyar a su aliado asediado y económicamente devastado, Venezuela, sino para lanzar un desafío directo, calculado e innegable a la hegemonía de Estados Unidos en su propio patio trasero estratégico. Lo que hace apenas unos meses eran tensiones marcadas por sanciones
esta
económicas.
Tremenda placa, y este es el primer concepto que queremos transmitirles. Este fue un juicio donde no solo se condena a Bolsonaro, sino que el Tribunal Superior de Justicia, la Corte Suprema de Brasil, acredita un esquema para complotar contra la posesión, el cambio de mando y por tanto perpetuar el gobierno de quien había perdido esa elección, que era Jair Bolsonaro. Recordemos que en las urnas quien ganó fue Lula da Silva. Y aquí están los protagonistas de este complot, de este esquema, dice la Corte Suprema, los 7. Jair Bolsonaro, el expresidente con 27 años de cárcel, su exministro de Defensa, muy importante, sobre todo lo que tenía que ver el vínculo con el ejército, porque el ejército se hizo coparte de este plan, ¿no es cierto?, para perpetuarse en el poder, 26 años de cárcel. Anderson Torres, exministro de Justicia, 24 años de cárcel. Miren el gabinete de Jair Bolsonaro, ¿no? Ex jefe de la Marina, Almir Garnier, 24 años de cárcel. Augusto Eneno, ex ministro de Seguridad Institucional, 21 años de cárcel. Ex ministro de Defensa también, Paulo Sergio Nogueira, 19 años de cárcel. Alexander Ramagén, diputado, 16 años de cárcel. Y este nombre es muy importante, Titi. Mauro Cid, teniente coronel, solo 2 años de cárcel.
¿Por qué tanta la diferencia?
Él hizo la delación compensada. Es Mauro Cid, el teniente coronel, quien le cuenta al tribunal todo el plan que tenía Jair Bolsonaro para evitar que Lula da Silva tomara posesión de su poder el 1 de enero del año 2022.
José María, y esa es una de las pruebas, la que finalmente...
Como la conocían las instituciones. Piensa que en el borrador golpista había un plan para tomar detenidos a los jueces de la Corte Suprema, el Tribunal Superior Federal. Un plan para tomar a los parlamentarios que estaban jurando, para tomar los detenidos. Ataques contra otros poderes del Estado.
¿Ese documento se ha hecho público, José María?
No en su conjunto, pero sí en sus sectores.